I tried every weight loss drug on the market. Well, most of them at least. And it would be wild and not transparent of me not to talk about the help that these drugs played during my weight loss transformation, going from this to this. So we're going to go over exactly what peptides I was taking during this transformation, the timing and the dosing, and what they did for me, including the side effects. So luckily for us, I did two things that would make this video possible. I documented every single aspect of this journey on Instagram, and two, I saved every single bottle that I have used so far. But before we dive in, yes, I am aware that I am essentially a walking pharmacy. Yes, my blood labs have actually never been this good before. And yes, peptides have essentially been able to cure my Crohn's disease back into remission. So before you start talking to me about the whole natty thing, let this be clear. Why would I want to be natty when I could be healthy? Even though I think there's still an argument that you could take peptides and still be natty. I'll leave that to you guys in the comments. So now it's disclaimer time. These protocols were written for me and my health issues in order to optimize my body and not yours. So you personally might not be able to tolerate some of these for various reasons. So don't take this as a guide, but more so just generalized information that I've done through my own self-body research. And now let's dive into it. So March 28th was the first day that I started using peptides when I was already 105 pounds down. And this is when I started doing what I coined my 30-day Transcend formation. So now this was going to be a very hardcore 30 days where I was going to absolutely redline myself and my body to see how far I could push in 30 days after already losing all that weight. And what I thought was gonna be a simple extra 5 or 10 pounds loss, which would have made sense, actually turned into 24 pounds in 30 days. For those 30 days, I used a crazy combination of cardio. I was working out 3 times a day, and I was absolutely perfect to the gram on my diet. And then on top of that, this is when the peptides came in, coming in with the first one, IGF-1 LR3. So this peptide mainly helped me with maintaining my muscle mass while I was cutting incredibly hard. But more importantly, it actually helped with the recovery of those muscles. This actually does help with speeding up of the metabolism and with the cellular regeneration. So this means that not only did it actually help me with my fat loss, but it actually helped my Crohn's a little bit. But the most noticeable thing was the pumps that you would get in the gym using IGF-1. Oh my God. My dosing for IGF-1 is that I was using 25 micrograms just before going to the gym. And this was used 5 days a week. Coming in at number 2, this is when I started using Tirzepatide. This one is very well known because it is a GLP-1 agonist, just like Ozempic. So this really helped with my insulin sensitivity and my glucose control while I was on crazy low carb days. But obviously with the main effect of it being appetite suppression. I would eat very little and feel very full. I'm now taking a very low dose of this because I combine it with another appetite suppressor. We're gonna talk about that later though. So my dosing started off at 2.5 milligrams, and then we titrated up to 7 milligrams as a maintenance dose. And then only at its absolute peak, that's when I hit the max dose of 15 milligrams. And this was only when I got really close to the bodybuilding show, and unfortunately that's also when I started feeling the side effects of it. It started off as a 1-a-week injection, but I ended up, when I got to the bigger dosing, of splitting it into 2 to have a more evenly spread medication half-life curve. And I was also using Tadalafil, or as you may better know it, Cialis, aka Viagra's older brother, aka my thing now works again. Now, this is a straight up medication and it's not actually a peptide, but it's definitely still worth mentioning. So this is a vasodilator, which means that it helped with the development of my cardiovascular endurance, as well as supporting the fact that I was working out 3 times a day. And since this medication actually does help to reduce gastrointestinal inflammation, this is definitely one of the reasons why my Crohn's actually started doing a lot better, and I'm still taking it to this day. So my dosing for this is 10 milligrams every day, but coming closer to the show, I actually had to reduce it to 5 milligrams and then 2.5 milligrams because I was so depleted that I was starting to get dizzy every time I stood up too fast. Now, due to a shipment delay, I actually only received my GHKCU and my BPC 157 on day 26 of my Transcend formation. Because apparently getting BPC into Canada is a wild process. So for BPC 157, although this wasn't directly aiding me in my fat loss, the fact that I came from strength sports means I had a lot of boo-boos everywhere around my body. And within 2 to 3 weeks, I'd say, of starting, that's when I really started feeling the fact that my tendonitis was actually going away and I wasn't hurting anymore. And on top of that, my bad rear delt, my bad shoulder, starting not to hurt as much. All this just meant that with BPC, sure, it wasn't necessarily burning fat, but it was helping me push harder in the gym, having better workouts, which would obviously lead to more calories burned. And then this little thing for my Crohn's disease. I am probably gonna stay on BPC 157 for as long as it is on the market. It helped reduce my gut inflammation so much that my Crohn's went on paper with all the symptoms and everything documented from an 8 out of 10 bad to a 4 out of 10 in about a month's time. And this is something that was actually tracked with my gastroenterologist when he realized that I was becoming asymptomatic, which is crazy to me considering how I had to have 11 surgeries in 7 months a few years ago. My initial dosage started at 0.4 milligrams, but then when I noticed that it really wasn't touching my tendonitis enough, we went all the way up to 0.8 milligrams, and this was every day. It's also when we went up that we noticed that my Crohn's got significantly better. In terms of application, I would put this where it hurts, which would generally be right in my forearms or in the back of my shoulder. And then came the peptide that most people tend to ask me about, GHKCU. Essentially a must for anybody that's doing any sort of weight loss journey or that has loose skin. By making your body, pardon my language, produce an absolute shit ton of its own collagen, it helps with the reparation of your skin tissue cells, including its elasticity, I'm French, sorry, which will obviously lead to then the tightening of your skin. Now, of course, if you have an excess of loose skin, this won't be enough and you'll probably need to get surgery. But there's also other methods that I've used. We're gonna have a video coming out on how I actually got rid of most of my loose skin, and I had a decent amount. But on top of that, it is incredibly good at reducing systemic body inflammation. So not only is that obviously incredibly important for fat loss, but my Crohn's absolutely thanked me for this one. And this is one that I'm actually still on. Not the injectable version anymore, I have a cream. So my dosing for both the injectable form and the cream form is 2 milligrams, and I would take both of these at night because the injections tend to be a little bit painful sometimes, and the cream, well, you want it to stay on for a long time, so I put the cream and then a shirt and then I go to bed. This is all the peptides that I took over the first 60 days. 24 pounds were lost in the first 30 days, and then I really took a step back and started relaxing because I knew my prep was coming and I was pretty burnt out, but I still managed to lose 8 pounds in the next month with very little effort in comparison to the grind that I had just done for the month before. And then came this crowd favorite, definitely an absolute game changer, Tesamorelin acetate. This one makes your own body create more of its own endogenous human growth hormone. But it also helps with the metabolism of visceral fat. And visceral fat is the dangerous fat around your organs. More so for me, and this was the game changer aspect of it, it actually helped fix my sleep. See, we all know that if you could put the actual benefits of sleep inside of a pill, it would be incredibly illegal. I made a few Instagram posts about this, but I actually did track my deep sleep scores, and they went from averaging from around 15 minutes a night to over an hour. And when I started taking this, I was on a little bit of a plateau, but this absolutely just crushed right through it, and I went on my merry way. And for those who don't know why deep sleep is so important, is because that is the time of the night where your body will actually produce most of its important metabolic hormones. My dosing for this was I would take 2 milligrams of this, but I would have to wait 1 hour after eating anything right before going to bed. And so around this time is actually when I got approved for the Transcend hormone replacement therapy program. In my case, it was for TRT. And that's when I started taking 200 milligrams every week of Testosterone Cypionate. I would take this weekly, split into 2 injections of 100 milligrams each. I was doing every Monday and Thursdays. And then we realized that my free testosterone was actually very low as well. My total testosterone were high, free was low. So what they recommended that I start taking was called DHEA Pregnenolone. This will help with the conversion from total test to free testosterone. And my dosing for this was 25 milligrams of each put into 1 pill that I would take every morning. Now, if you haven't subscribed yet, I would absolutely love if you could. We are really trying to hit 50,000 by the end of the year. Seems a little bold. I think it's possible. And if you already are, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Do you think you're still natty if you take peptides? If not, why not? Especially considering how most peptides are actually fully natural products. But let's keep going, because then came NAD, glutathione, and TB500. So although BPC 157 was doing really amazing things for my inflammation, I was very happy to receive TB500. And the reason for this is because when you mix TB500 and BPC 157, you get what is called and often referred to as the Wolverine stack. This little beauty here will greatly reduce muscle inflammation and actually help in the healing process of your tendons and your ligaments, which is where my shoulder was really starting to have issues because I was getting leaner and I was still lifting quite heavy. And since this little beautiful bastard also helps with systemic inflammation, after I put this into my stack, my Crohn's pretty much actually went quiet. So in terms of dosing, I was taking 7.5 milligrams of this twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays. This is like a merry-go-round of all the chairs in my house. And then came NAD+. And this very quickly actually became one of my favorite peptides. By the time I actually started using this, I was only about 8 weeks out of my show. And my energy levels were absolutely horrible. I'm talking, I was taking like 1 or 2 naps every single day on top of 2 or 3 energy drinks. So as we all know, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. And this beautiful bottle helps boost mitochondria activity, meaning a lot more energy. And of course, more energy equals more fat burn. This one I had to actually titrate up very slowly for a good reason. So this bottle is 200 milligrams per milliliter, and I started taking 40 milligrams and then slowly made my way up to 60 milligrams until I eventually hit 80 milligrams. And even if in my protocol they want me to be taking 100 milligrams, I just personally can't handle it. See, because right after taking this for about like, I'd say 10 to 20 seconds, about 2 minutes after the injection, you'll feel this weird sense of like nausea and euphoria. I don't really know how to explain it. And then you feel this absolute energy spike that just lasts the whole day. And now we're gonna talk about one that every single bodybuilder or anybody going through the extremes or any sort of PD should be using, glutathione. If you ask any of them, I promise you that they will say that this is without a doubt, most likely if they care about any sort of longevity, their favorite peptide. See, this acts like a shield for your organs, especially with the big boys who completely attack their body with heavy duty drug use. To give you an idea, my blood labs came back after using this and they were better than ever before. My liver inflammation markers were better, my creatinine actually dropped, and I'm on super heavy duty Crohn's medication, my Inflectra at a decently high dose. So my standard ALT levels would usually sit around 190 to 250, but after using this, it actually dropped to 116. So in terms of dosing, I was taking 100 milligrams of this every single day until we got closer to the show where we bumped it up to 200 milligrams. And so right before the show, we actually added some Melanotan, and this would stimulate my melanin production in my skin, which would in terms make me a little bit darker right before getting my spray tan. But it also has an indirect effect of appetite suppression, as well as a mild secondary effect to fight against erectile dysfunction. And seeing how my cherries don't work, this was a very nice touch considering how, again, closer to the show, we were lowering my Tadalafil. So now there are 2 new peptides that I did start taking, but I'm not gonna talk about them just yet because I haven't had time to really test them out and evaluate how they work. Like I've said about 1,000,000 times before, I will only ever talk and or vouch for products that I've tried myself and know work. Speaking of which, I actually teamed up with my coach that designed my program to help me lose all this weight and get ready for the bodybuilding show. And we are now actually starting to do one-on-one coaching. If you're interested in that, there will be a link in the bio. But back to the peptides, these 2 new peptides that I'm going to talk about later are Tesogensine and 5-amino-1-MQ. 5-amino is supposed to block one of the enzymes that reduces the speed of your metabolism. I believe it's called nicotinamide. And Tesogensine is supposed to help with appetite suppression, increasing the metabolic rate through different neural pathways that also help with emotion control and brain fog. Coming to my next second most popular question that I get asked all the time regarding peptides, what side effects did I experience? And there is only really 2. So closer to the show, because I was using Tadalafil, which isn't even a peptide again, because of the fact it's a vasodilator and I was so incredibly depleted, I started getting dizzy every time I stood up, like I mentioned earlier. So I actually started taking some ephedrine to counter that, and it was doing pretty well. And then the second one was because we were getting so close to the show, I was crazy depleted, my hunger cues were gone. I started taking the max dose of Tirzepatide, which is again a GLP-1, and when it comes to any sort of medication, once you get towards the max dosages, that's when you will start experiencing side effects. In this case, I would start getting nauseous. It was usually after I was finished my cardios, which is why I had to do my workouts and then my cardios and not the other way around. But I never puked and or not finished the workout, so it couldn't have been that bad. And then another symptom, which can't really be directly blame to the peptides, was that I was experiencing some pretty severe muscle cramps very close to the show. Then PVL sent me some electrolytes and I started triple dosing this and I was fine. And I only ended up cramping once on stage, and it was my upper abs during a most muscular. So all in, just a reminder that no, I am not natty because I would rather be healthy. And so whether you look at my labs or you look at the fact that my Crohn's is essentially gone, this has all been incredibly net positive for me. And yes, I am also aware that there is potentially a lack of long-term research, but the fact that I'm living incredibly healthy now is so worth it for me. Yes, losing the 105 pounds initially was hard, but losing that extra 55 pounds was even harder. And how much can we attribute to the pharma help? I would honestly say quite a bit, but I can absolutely guarantee that if I didn't bust my ass the way that I did, I would have fallen very short of where I ended up on this transformation. Like I mentioned before, this is definitely not for everybody, and you should definitely speak to a doctor or somebody incredibly knowledgeable about any sort of medication before you start taking them. Never buy from the black market because you don't know if what you're getting is just injectable dirty water. I'll have a link to Transcend in the bottom. All you have to do is fill out the form and they'll get in contact with you, and they'll then see what they can do for you. From general optimization to longevity, or in my terms, crazy fat loss. But until next time, I hope you all have a great day.